CNG as a fuel has gotten a bit of a bad rap over the years, hasn't it? It's often perceived to be the fuel of choice of taxis and public transport, and yes, it is not without its share of compromises. But frankly, with petrol and diesel prices being the way they are these days, you can't blame people for starting to consider it. But how do you get these people into CNG cars? Well, for one, you start putting CNG into your nicer cars, like a premium hatchback, like the Tata Altroz. And two, you start addressing those shortcomings. But before we go any further, tell us what you think about the Tata Altroz iCNG. Will it get you to switch to CNG? Is this the right candidate for that car? Would you buy another CNG car instead of this? Let us know down in the comments. And if you like this video, give it a like, share it with your friends. And if you haven't done so already, do subscribe to the Autocar India channel. At this point, I'd probably usually take you around the outside of the car, but that won't be necessary as almost nothing has changed. In fact, all it gets is a new iCNG badge. And that's just as well. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? I personally think this is one of the best looking hatchbacks, not just in the segment, but on the market as a whole. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments section below. The back seat is the same too, with good overall space but slightly tight headroom. What I really need to show you in more detail though is that boot, so let's head back outside. Now, as I alluded to earlier, one of the compromises that Tata Motors has addressed with this car is boot space. You can load a couple of bags in there. Yes, the boot is down from 345 litres in the standard Altroz to 210, but it is still a reasonable size for a few small bags. And it's more than most CNG cars have because they are usually full of one giant CNG tank. How have they done it? Well, they split the big CNG tank into two smaller CNG tanks, and they are 30 and 30 litres each for 60 litres in total. And if you're wondering, with all this, where is the spare tire? Well, let me show you. While it sits inside the boot in the regular Altroz, the CNG version spare has been moved beneath the car. And it can be released by loosening a bolt inside the boot, just ahead of the CNG tanks. The tire drops down on a cord and is unhooked easily enough. And to put it back, you simply hook it up again and wind it the other way. And with that, let's hop inside and get going. Before we go any further into how this car drives, let's just take a moment to appreciate how nice the interior of the Altroz looks. It's always been a good looking thing, and here with the black on top, light grey at the bottom and glossy silver in the middle, it looks just superb and really premium. Quality is also pretty good. Yeah, there's a lot of hard plastics all over the dash, but there's a nice soft pad over here, and the design is just so nice that you really can forgive it the lack of soft touch plastics on the surface itself. You also get a nice sporty feeling steering wheel. It's really nice to grip off the right size and looks pretty cool too. And really, compared to the petrol or diesel Altroz, not much has changed around here. They're just very small and subtle things. For one, there is the new CNG mode on and off switch, which has come to the right of the steering wheel over here. It appears to be missing a drive mode switch because this car doesn't have any drive modes. And the instrument cluster is a very basic monochrome MID type unit. Yes, it has the speedometer nice and big, which is nice, but other than that, it looks quite basic. It does give you warnings and lights as you might expect, especially this yellow one over here that tells you you are in CNG mode. But yeah, I would have liked the nice color screen that you get in the higher spec versions of the petrol and diesel Altroz. Apart from that central screen, what you get is a rev counter, which is a blocky backlit panel on the left hand side, and two fuel gauges, one for petrol and one for CNG on the right hand side. Another thing that Tata Motors started with its iCNG versions of its Tiago and Tigor actually, and that's very much true of this car as well, is offering it in more than just the lower variants. And this car that I'm driving is the top spec variant. In fact, it's so high up that I don't even know if I can get its name right. XZ Plus OS, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. But the point is, you no longer are buying a base or mid-spec car just because you've chosen the CNG life. You don't have to give up on a sunroof or IRA connected car tech. You get a wireless charger, auto climate control, a Harman sound system. It's quite a lot of stuff. There are a few features missing too though. And you know what? Let's just list out all the features right now. So yes, as you can see, this top spec car is fully loaded. But the few things missing that we would have liked to see are the color screen instrument cluster, driving modes, engine stop start and cruise control, all of which you can get on other Altroz variants. Additionally, maybe LED headlamps, wireless CarPlay and Android Auto would be nice, as would Tata's impressive new 10.25-inch touchscreen. But I guess we'll have to wait until the next update for those. And on the safety front, yes, the regular Altroz got 5 stars in the older global NCAP crash tests, but maybe in time we'll see ESC and more airbags added to the mix. Let's get back to the road now because I'm keen to see what's changed and what hasn't about the Altroz driving experience. Over the course of this drive, I have actually found myself checking that indicator for whether I'm in CNG mode or not, because unlike a lot of other CNG cars, this is very similar to a petrol driving experience. Yes, there is a bit of a difference, but it's not as bad as I've ever experienced before. No, in the Altroz CNG, the difference between petrol and CNG modes is very subtle, and it doesn't feel like a burden to drive in CNG mode or something that you would do only to save fuel. Quite frankly, I think most users will just use it in CNG mode all the time, and that is helped by the fact that this car starts in CNG mode. You don't have to start it in petrol mode like you do a lot of other CNG cars. Now this is down to the fact that this car uses one common ECU for both its petrol and CNG modes, not two. And this has a number of different advantages apart from letting you start in CNG mode itself. When you have two ECUs, they need to communicate with one another, and that causes a bit of a delay when switching between petrol and CNG. Not the case here. It's very seamless. And also, when you have just one ECU, that just means fewer components, fewer complexity, and therefore lower costs. Mind you, in times of chip shortage, the fewer the chips, the better. Now, unfortunately, there is one thing this CNG Altroz could not escape, and that is one shortcoming of the Altroz itself, and that's its 1.2-litre petrol engine. Now, this engine was never one of the best, even in its petrol-only guise, and those shortcomings have sort of transferred over to CNG as well. For one, it's not particularly refined. You can always get this diesel-like thrum coming from the bonnet at any speeds, at any time, at any revs. Then there's the gear shift, which is not the smoothest. Yes, the clutch is nice and light, and so is the gear shift action, but you can sometimes miss a gear if you're not paying attention. It can be a bit naughty. But more than anything else, this engine just lacks that outright punch that you get from some other 1.2-litre petrol engines in the segment. It was never the strongest engine around, and that only gets worse when you drive it in CNG mode. But just how much worse are we talking? Well, there's one easy way to find out. We've got two cars here. Yes, they're both CNG, but they can also run in petrol. So Soham's going to be in the petrol run car, and I'm going to run in CNG. And let's just see which is quicker. Now, this is not a strictly timed drag race. The road isn't even that flat. It's kind of uphill. We don't have our timing equipment, but hey, just in the interest of fun and figuring it out, which is faster, CNG or petrol? For reference, in petrol mode, the engine makes 88 horsepower and 115 Newton meters, while in CNG mode, that drops to 73.5 horsepower and 103 Newton meters. But Tata says it's been tuned for better low-down torque in CNG mode. Got him off the line. Oh, but he's gaining, ah! So, as it turns out, just as it feels, the Altroz running on CNG is slightly slower than the Altroz running on petrol. Trouble is, in neither mode does the engine feel peppy or exciting. Which is a shame because, as before, this engine is allied to one of the best chassis in the business. From a handling and dynamics point of view, the Altroz is just superb. It's got a steering that's light but not too light, weighty but not too weighty, and it's got a good amount of feel. And that's something in the retuning of this car that they said they would not compromise on. And it's a similar story with the suspension. The Altroz always had tremendous body control and really nice cornering dynamics without compromising on the ride quality. With the CNG tanks and all the other ancillaries, it weighs about 150 to 200 kgs more than the regular petrol Altroz, and to compensate for that, they've had to stiffen up the suspension. They tell us it's about 15% more stiff than the petrol Altroz, and that makes it stiffer than even the diesel Altroz. Can you feel that? Yeah, just a little bit. When you go over bumps, it does feel a little lumpier than we're used to with this car, but it's not to the point of being uncomfortable. This still remains one of the more comfy premium hatchbacks in the segment. If anything, what it does is give you more confidence at higher speeds, whether it's cornering really fast or just cruising out on the highway where it can hold 3-digit speeds with ease. It's also worth noting that this wasn't some plug-and-play job like a lot of aftermarket CNG kits are. No, the Altroz's Alpha platform was designed from day one to incorporate CNG. So the groundwork was laid from the start, and you can see that in certain things like the way those twin cylinders are accommodated in the boot, and also the way that they've not compromised on safety. They, of course, pride themselves on being a 5-star rated GNCAP crash tested hatchback, this one. And they say you won't suffer any losses in safety based on those CNG tanks because the cradle in which the tanks sit is integrated into the boot within the bumper height. So if there is a impact from behind, the cylinders won't be forced into the cabin. They will hold their structural rigidity because they are, of course, welded to the chassis, not just bolted on. And these are the little things that Tata Motors says sets the Altroz iCNG apart from other CNG models in the market. And when you think about it, Tata has managed to address a lot of the usual CNG compromises by giving you some boot space, petrol-like drivability, and a whole lot of features, which are things you usually don't get in CNG cars. And this is on top of the inherent Altroz strengths like its good looks, ride and handling, and solid build. But there's one inherent shortcoming of the CNG life that you'll just have to live with, and that's the smaller CNG filling infrastructure compared to petrol or diesel. In a big metro city, that might lead to long queues waiting to fill up, but luckily here in Goa, we didn't have that problem. There simply aren't that many CNG vehicles in the Sunshine State. And this being a CNG car, you're probably wondering about fuel efficiency and mileage, but unfortunately the car has yet to be certified by ARAI, so we don't have that figure for you yet. Now before I try and sum things up, let me just tell you that this is not the first car to try and take CNG premium, but what I can tell you is that it makes a concerted effort to make it feel as premium as possible. You see, there are a number of variants. It starts from 7.55 lakh rupees and goes all the way up to this XZ Plus OS trim, which is fully loaded at 10.55 lakh rupees. It's actually just a little bit more expensive than the diesel version of the Altroz. And that brings me to another point. The Altroz is a car that has a number of powertrains: petrol, turbo petrol, diesel, the only remaining hatchback of its kind, and now CNG. So it caters to a wide gamut and it has its fingers in all the pies. That gives it a distinct advantage and it gives the customer a whole lot of choice. So, will this be the car that makes you switch to CNG? Let us know down in the comments, and thanks for watching.